Philip Voysey is the author of Cusco, A Journey from the Head to the Heart. Phil describes himself as a chronic self-actualizer and hopeless optimist. His passions, not in any particular order, are writing, educating, coaching, playing music, and of course his beautiful wife, daughter, and 2 Dobermans. He has lived and worked in Zimbabwe, Canada, Peru, Bangladesh, where he learned some of his most important life lessons. He currently now lives in the beautiful Blue Mountains. He is the co-founder of Cultural Connections and the Possibility of Us project, committed to promoting life as the art of possibility and working to create a world that is kinder and more compassionate. Would you please welcome to the State Library of New South Wales, Phil Voysey.
Thank you for that, Tim. I want to thank Jane and the State Library of New South Wales for this opportunity, and I want to thank all the speakers today for sharing your stories. Stories so far have been really inspiring. I've really enjoyed them. Thank you very much. And I want to emphasise my book is not about Cusco, the big retail chain. It's about Cusco, a place in Peru. You know, learning how to love has been one of the big challenges for me in my life. Loving is hard. Has anybody else had the same experience? It's a journey without a destination. Sometimes I felt like I've been skipping along a trail, it's all easy, and then suddenly I'm scrambling up a mountain, stumbling, falling, getting lost, losing my way, trying to work out where to next. And that's more or less what my book, Cusco, A Journey from the Head to the Heart, is all about. It's about learning how to love and the lessons that that wonderful place taught me. Let me take you there. October 1985, I arrived in Cusco with no Spanish and no plan. Well, I had a bit of a plan originally, and that was to learn Spanish in Peru and then travel down to Chile and Argentina and teach English. However, my plan was flawed right from the outset because I'd bought a one-way ticket to Lima thinking I was going to South America for years. I wasn't coming back in a hurry. But the problem was, because I had a one-way ticket, I had no proof of onward travel. And so therefore I couldn't get visas into those countries. So I found myself stuck in Cusco. Now, Cusco is a pretty nice place to be stuck in, I have to say. Cusco's at 3,500 metres up in the Andes Mountains of Peru. It's the old capital of the Inca Empire, the gateway to Machu Picchu. And it's a place where the old world meets the new. You walk along the narrow cobblestone streets of Cusco and you see Spanish colonial buildings on top of Inca stones. And you can actually run your finger along the join where the colonial buildings meet the old Inca walls. It's an inspiring place. Almost immediately I moved in with a family. I was paying $40 a month board for everything. It was a fantastic deal. This is back in 1985. Everything except hot water. And I only discovered that the first time I went to take a shower. And that was a bit disturbing when I thought, geez, I've got a year of cold showers in front of me here. Anyway, I remember those first weeks, particularly around the lunch table with the family. Jose, Ingmar, the 4 daughters, Spanish flying back and forth. 'Cause, you know, lots of joking, lots of laughter. And my head was just hurting. I mean, the Spanish sounded like, or felt like bullets penetrating my brain. I couldn't understand a word. But not only that, I was having some sort of identity crisis. Because if I couldn't understand, if I couldn't speak, if I couldn't be, you know, worldly, witty Phil talking about philosophy and politics in the world, then who the hell was I? Who the hell was I? So I was having a bit of a crisis. The family looked after me a little bit too well. You know, they wouldn't let me, for example, take my plates to the kitchen after lunch. You know, I'd stand up to take my plates to the kitchen, and Evelyn, the eldest daughter, sitting next to me, she'd say, no, Felipe, siéntate, 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 and she'd push me back down. I wanted to say, hey, I'm not some unreconstructed male slob who can't carry his own plates to the kitchen. But of course, when I opened my mouth, I had nothing to say. That's my excuse anyway. So I decided to reclaim some self-respect. So I practiced this phrase in Spanish. Puedo cargar tu plato a la cocina? Can I carry your plates to the kitchen? And I practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced until it was rolling off my tongue. It was effortless. And so the moment came, the end of lunch. I stood up, I grabbed the Senora Engma's plates, I grabbed the plates and said, Puedo cargar tu plato a la cocina, Senora? And it just rolled off. Perfect. I was very proud of myself. And I headed out across the courtyard, and Evelyn catches up with me halfway, and she's laughing. Tears are streaming down her face. She says, Felipe, no es cagar, es cargar. Cagar is otra cosa. Can you hear the difference? Cagar y cagar? I couldn't either. Apparently, I'd ever so politely and ever so nicely asked Engma, the mother of the house, if I could shit in a plate. Well, I was mortified. I rushed back inside. I said, lo siento, estoy muy embarazada. I was trying to tell her I'm very, very embarrassed. But that's not what I told her at all. Now, there's this, embarazada is one of those words in Spanish they call a false friend in linguistics. You think you know what it means, what it should mean. Embarrassed, right? But actually, I told the whole family that I was very sorry that I was very, very, very pregnant. So, Spanish in the coming months became part of who I was. Very quickly, I had a new identity. I had a new family, a new language, had a proving girlfriend, and I had a new culture. And I learned, I was starting to absorb some of that Peruvian. It's got a beautiful warmth and a beautiful playfulness about it. I was starting to absorb some of that. And I was learning some really, really important lessons. One was that this idea of identity, who we take ourselves to be, is just a story. It's just a made-up story in our minds, and we can change the story anytime we like. The other thing I learnt, which I think was an equally important story, I learnt that I was slightly ridiculous. And I think that's a good thing to realise as human beings, that we're all slightly ridiculous, aren't we? Slightly ridiculous. At any rate, Cusco kept on giving. I left and I came back in 1988 to help an American friend of mine set up a home for street kids. We arrived in Peru in 1988, January of 1988, and it's a country going through enormous political upheaval. There's a lot of fear and suspicion because the Shining Path, Maoist terrorist group, were very active. I mean, they were responsible, not only them, but the military, for 70,000 deaths during the 1980s. So it was a serious war going on in Peru at the time. And locals thought we were either terrorists or that we were child traffickers. So we had a lot of resistance. And they were right to be suspicious because there had been foreigners involved in both child trafficking and setting up illegal adoption agencies. At any rate, very soon I found myself I was a house dad to 7 kids, 7 abandoned street kids. They all came with nits and worms and tuberculosis. And I have to confess to you, and I'm not particularly proud of this, I didn't want to go near them at first. I was really scared of catching something. I was particularly worried about catching tuberculosis, of course. And the other thing I was worried about was that if I get too close to these kids and then I leave, they're going to feel abandoned for a second time in their lives. And I didn't want that. So I had a conversation with Andrina in the book about this, and she said, Phil, just open your heart and let love in. And I did. That's exactly what I did. And love rushed in. And I had a wonderful year with these kids. I wasn't always the best house dad. Sometimes it was all too much for me and I'd retreat into my room and withdraw. And other times I'd push them away, sometimes not very nicely, I have to say, have to be honest. But the love that I felt for them and the trust that they had for me over that year still is one of the most treasured experiences of my life, and I still keep in contact with some of those kids to this day. But Cusco keeps on giving, you know, keeps on giving. I was asked, while I was working on this project with the kids, I was asked to translate for some doctors from the United States, plastic surgeons, Interplast. They'd come to do plastic surgery in the country. And I remember arriving at the Hospital Regional this particular day. The corridor was lined with people with some of the most horrible deformities I'd ever seen. There were cleft palate babies, of course, but also there were people with horrible deformities from burns. You know, horrible disfigured scarring, disabling scarring actually from burns. These were kids coming from remote communities who had fallen into kerosene stoves and wood fire stoves, and because they were remote, because there were no medical facilities nearby, they'd never been treated. So the scarring had just been allowed to form. I remember the first day of surgery, I was actually invited to go and observe cleft palate surgery by some of these American doctors, and I observed it. I came out this particular day, and one of the mothers just rushed up to me and grabbed me. She grabbed me. And tears were streaming down her face. She was hysterical. She was saying, please, 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 can you take my child to the United States with you? Can you give her a better life than the one that I can give her? People abuse me. They tell me what a bad mother I am to have a child who looks like this, and they abuse my child for being ugly. I didn't know what to say or do, actually. I was just completely paralysed by the anguish and the pain of this particular woman. And I remember I just said, look, sorry, I'm not an American doctor, and I just walked away. And I wished God, I wished I'd been able to step up with love and compassion and kindness in that moment, and I couldn't. I didn't know how to. Love and compassion are sometimes hard. I've come to understand that. But I learned a lot of lessons from Peru, and Peru in lots of ways prepared me for Bangladesh. And on the back of my experience in Peru, I got a job as Save the Children Director in Bangladesh. And I have to say, that was probably one of the most inspiring experiences of my life as well. I had the great privilege as a director of going into very poor villages, I mean the poorest people in the world really, village Bangladeshis, and seeing how people live their lives and getting to know people. And of course the poverty in a Bangladeshi village is very confronting. But what I saw and what I really came away with was the courage, the resilience, the resourcefulness of the women in particular, living incredible poverty but also incredible oppression, living in a very male-dominated society. And I thought those women were the most inspiring people I've ever met in my life. And I try to channel those Bangladeshi women all the time. They're my inspiration. And on the back of that experience, it sort of sent me on a journey of self-discovery, if you like. And, you know, I've done lots of courses, you know, personal development courses to better understand myself and how my mind works. And look, I'm reminded of a wonderful anecdote here from Phyllis Diller, which I read in a restaurant. It goes like this. I tried Buddhism, numerology, Scientology, Kabbalah, transcendental meditation, Tai Chi, yoga, and feng shui, but I discovered that straight gin works best. I love that quote. It reminds me that although the journey to self-discovery is a very, very serious one, we should never take ourselves too seriously. And so, channeling those Bangladeshi women, I decided that there were three important things I wanted to do in my life that really express who I am. One is to write, one is to play music, and one is to set up my own business. And I'm doing all of those things. But I had to overcome a few barriers. I've always wanted to perform my songs in public, but I remember when I auditioned for the chorus of the school musical in high school, I didn't get in. I wasn't even good enough for the bloody chorus. So imagine I had this little voice in my head, you can't sing, Phil, don't get up and perform. It took me a long while to overcome that one. But in the last couple of years, I've published a bunch of songs, recorded some songs, put them on Spotify. I performed a show last year of original stories and songs. And I overcame that block. You know, it helps to be of a certain age where you just don't give a shit what people think about you. It really helps, doesn't it? Can anybody relate to that? Yes. It really, really helps. And so yeah, I'm just about to record another bunch of songs as well. And I started writing when I got back to Australia, and I published a lot of, did a lot of freelance writing, you know, magazine articles and that sort of thing. But my university life, where I'd studied, literature and all the greats, convinced me that you had to be a genius to write something of real worth, real literary worth. And so I resisted the temptation to write anything decent for a long while. And then once again, I just thought, well, hell, once again, I don't care what people think. So, and so I wrote the book, Cusco, a memoir, and it helps, a certain desperation helps when you're trying to overcome your fears. I wasn't desperate as in trying to survive like a Bangladeshi villager, but I was desperate to live the life that I wanted to live. And once you get desperate, that helps you to overcome fear. You think, bugger it, I'm just going to do this. So I wrote the book. It's a bit raw, a bit steamy in parts. There's a bit of sex, there's a bit of death, but you've got to have sex and death in a good read, haven't you? I mean, you can't write a book without sex and death. A friend of mine described the book as a striptease, which I think is a great description. And I'm working on a novel at the moment, which I'm very excited about, which also draws on my experiences in Peru. And the final thing is I started up a business. I've been in business sort of in fits and starts with my original business, Cultural Connections. Now I'm committing to a new concept, which is a Possibility of Us project, which is all about helping people to live their possibility, to live with passion and purpose, to live with creativity, to live with courage and compassion. That's really what I'm all about. Which brings me back to the topic of love. I think self-love is the foundation of all love, really. And with self-love, you don't worry about failing, because failing is just an opportunity to grow. You don't worry about rejection because, well, rejection is just part of life and it's not personal anyway a lot of the time. You don't worry about you learn to embrace uncertainty, you learn to welcome change, and you realise that the only risk in life is in not taking the risk. And it would be very remiss of me to not acknowledge my beautiful wife, Cheryl, who's been my partner on this journey, a wonderful, energetic source of pure love. She is. And she's been a great source of support for me through my creative journey, my business journey, through all the hardships and ups and downs we've faced. And my beautiful daughter, Maya. She's not here today, but Maya, I'm pleased to say, she's made me aware of what a flawed human being I am every day of my life. Has anybody got a daughter like that? And I'm eternally grateful for that because I can never take myself too seriously. So, I'd encourage you to explore the possibility of who you can become. It's never too old. There's never such a time as where you stop doing that. So I encourage you to go on that journey and enjoy that journey. And if you want to go to Cusco, there are two ways you can get there. One is to read my book. And the other way, which I'm very excited, Cheryl and I are taking a group to Cusco next year. And we're going to do that every year. So if you want to explore Cusco and the land of the Incas, the Sacred Valley, and the incredible place that Cusco in Peru is, you can come with us. So come and talk to us later on. Thank you very much.